Hey, Pastor Mark Conforti here with another Cheerwine Chat. I grabbed a Cheerwine. How about you grab one too? With the holidays coming, I find myself thinking about our college students, praying for them, wondering what it's like being on a university or college campus these days. Well, here to help us think about this and the importance of campus ministry is a conversation with the Reverend David Hollis. David is an extraordinarily talented United Methodist minister, graduate of Lambeth University and Duke Divinity School, currently appointed to serve on the campus of Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. I had the great opportunity to catch up with David recently. Take a listen. All right, David Hollis, welcome to Cheerwine Chat.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm glad they have Cheerwine in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes, that was one of the ways early on that I knew I belonged. They actually had it on campus for a while. I think now it doesn't exist on tap, but they had it, at like drink machines on tap, and I knew it was a sign. So
it was
there
a sign.
You go.
Well, I got a Cheerwine slush from a local gas station here, special to Salisbury, because you are a special guy, and I've been looking forward to the chance to chat with you here. So thanks for making time.
Thank you very much.
So you are at Belmont Wesley Fellowship with Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes.
And you've been there for how many years?
I came in 2014, so I've been there 7 years.
Wow, that's when I arrived here in Salisbury. I didn't realize it was the same time.
There you go. Yeah.
Now, you used to be a pastor within a local church setting.
That is correct.
So what do you notice is the difference between, ministry in a local church, different or similar to ministry within a campus ministry setting?
One of the, I think, major differences is, and I'm hopeful that maybe our work at Wesley will help perhaps this move somewhat into local churches. But one of the things we try and do the most is empower students in their creativity. So when they have ideas for a trip or for a project that they want to, we had a student who, at the end of the semester, a lot of students have leftover food points, or they have these things that
for their dining plan on campus.
Yeah, the Bitcoin or whatever the thing it is, and they have to use them or lose them. And so a lot of them that you can use those to do different things. You can shop at certain stores on campus or do certain things with them. Well, she thought instead of, a lot of students end up either wasting them or losing them, or they get a bunch of stuff they don't really need to kind of and it's this kind of free for all. And she said, what if we encouraged students to buy like hygiene items or things that our friends in Nashville who maybe either are unhoused or maybe you're just barely getting by, and they could really use help with some hygiene items or something like that. And so she wanted to call it points with a purpose. And so instead of sort of and I know a lot of different churches are like this, but sometimes it can be hard to get an idea, kind of moving through the committees of a church or whatever. And it can be hard at a university too. So there's still meetings you have to have. But what we really want to try and do is empower our students and equip them that their ideas and their gifts need to be utilized for God's purposes. And so we kind of put a team together to help get that going, and the university was really happy to help with that. And so it was a big hit. And again, it was not really I think maybe we had our name, somewhere on it, but it wasn't like a big look at us thing. It was just when our students have ideas, we want to invest in that, and we want to help so that ideally they'll get into churches and they'll have those ideas and they'll already have a sense of how those things, can happen. And all they'll need is maybe like a blessing from, pastors or staff, rather than, it possibly becoming another project for an already burdened staff or pastor to then take on. So maybe trying to shift that model a little bit is one of the big differences.
Yeah. And I can imagine with points is it points with a purpose? Points for a purpose. Yeah. Points for a purpose. I like that. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that spreading beyond just Belmont Wesley Fellowship and other students getting on board with that. Friends down the hall, friends share the idea in class. And that's a way that campus ministry you're leading is having a ripple effect throughout the whole
Exactly. It became a campus-wide, initiative, and it was, promoted near and far. So it was great.
And you lead Bible studies, you lead worship, mission trips, these sorts of service project initiatives, right?
Yeah, we in a lot of ways we do function really similarly to a church. We have a weekly service on Tuesday night called Connection, that is kind of part worship service, part scripture study, life application discussion. We incorporate small groups into that. One of the things that, again, maybe certain churches, if they're having real difficulty nurturing small groups, one of the things we found is that our small groups weren't really working all that well as a separate thing, asking students to carve out another hour and a half of an already busy time. Students that I work with and serve are actually quite different species than I was when I was in school. I didn't have a job my first year, and then after that, I had a youth director job that was extraordinarily flexible. A lot of them have not flexible jobs, and they have other demands maybe on them, and so asking for another hour of their time when many of them are already coming to an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours on Tuesday night, and maybe they're involved with something else that we do at another time in the week. And so we didn't want to just let that go away and say, well, small groups aren't important. So we just started incorporating that into one of our Tuesday nights. So we would still have, a time of worship, and then the bulk of the rest of the night would be them in small groups, working through a spiritual practice that we gave them the week before to try out and discuss, or maybe they had a justice practice. They were asked to write letters of advocacy about something, or maybe they were even asked to go to an event to raise social justice concerns. And they're getting to be in those groups and share about that, but it's not, a burden in terms of adding another thing. It's more of a blessing of saying, I was going to come here already, and now I'm able to do this and have a slightly different experience.
Yeah. So as you listen to college students, spend time with them, build relationships with them, what are you hearing? What are you noticing? What's it like being a college kid these days?
So I think, being in anything these days is pretty tough, if we're all honest. And thankfully, the students that I work with are really honest about how they're doing, and we've established over the course of a few years what I think is a really healthy space to be open about things like mental health and emotional health, and how those are part of overall health. Those are part of what Jesus is seeking to heal and what Jesus is seeking to bring new life to. So those are not separate. Those are not things to not talk about in church or in faith communities, but those are at the very core of who we are. And so obviously we had, probably anybody you talk to knows that more and more students face mental health challenges. There are a lot of different things that we think kind of contribute to that. But certainly then throwing a pandemic in the mix of that, having students not graduate in a traditional way from high school that generations before them had always done, and then come to a fall of college that was not like anything any of us had ever seen before, having to do a lot of things virtually, which has its own toll. So we talk a lot about how all those different things can add up, and how we talk about notion of Sabbath and theology of Sabbath, and how we aren't made for just endless work. We aren't made for we're not machines. We're creatures. We have rhythms. We have seasons of our life and our health. And so we try and set really good examples, and be open. I'm open about my own mental health challenges that I've faced, and kind of I talk through that with students, both in large groups and also one-on-one. We work hand in hand with other campus ministers, with counseling staff on campus, and I've even I've gone with students to emergency rooms or doctors' offices to try and get them the help that they needed. So a lot of it is over the last few years has been really focused on a total view of health. How are you doing with spiritual health, with are you progressing, are you growing toward perfection in the Wesleyan models of sanctification, and also are you using your gifts? We talk a lot about how it isn't just like do any career you want to do or do any career that you think is important. It's you were given certain gifts and you need to be using those some way. If you're not using those in a vocation and in a career, let's find a way for you to use those so that those are still nourished. So all of those components, I think of health are what we're really focused on.
Yeah. Thinking about the Wesleyan approach to ministry, not just the theological components of, growing in grace, but the very, historical and practical side of the Wesley brothers at Oxford. Methodism started as a campus ministry, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. And more and more, it seems, I think most New Testament scholars think that the disciples were fairly young, maybe teenagers, maybe, very young adults. Jesus, we think was crucified when he was between 30 and 33. So that's pretty young. And I think there's a lot to the experiences that young adults have and how that shapes, in many cases, the rest of their life, right? Their trajectory of their life. We talked just the other night about the habits you develop, habits of generosity, habits of giving time and volunteering and devoting your energy to things. Those habits that you make as a teenager, as a young adult, have a way of really sticking with you. And so that's, again, one of the main things is trying to kind of have these spiritual practices, these formational practices, incorporated into their daily life, and done so in a way that we're checking in on each other. We're not, nobody's fussing at anybody, nobody's shaking anybody's fingers. But again, knowing that you have a space where you can come talk about, like, this just isn't working, and this isn't doing anything for me, and we can interrogate that, and look at maybe why that is the case, as opposed to possibly feeling like, well, everyone's doing this and it works for them, and so there just must be something wrong with me. Let's kind of open that up, and let's be curious about that, rather than going into blame and shame and those things that we know aren't particularly useful or healthy.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing to think that we've been able to talk for this length of time and not just break up into giggling like
we do that. We do that with some frequency.
Yeah, that's right. So it's amazing to think, when we first met, you were 23, just having finished your first year of divinity school, and I was 27, and I was tasked with being your supervisor because you were the ministry intern at the church. Right. And I remember finding out about you and reading like a profile and thinking, okay, well, let's see who this guy is. And then almost instantly, I thought, no, I'm his friend. I'm not his supervisor.
Right.
But I had to try. I had to try to be the adult in the room.
Yeah, sure.
Talking about plans and visits and things,
Yeah.
But invariably, we would just end up talking about Seinfeld or something else and just start laughing.
Yeah. When I took my first sip of this, I was going to say it tastes like Bennigan's, to see if that, had you just completely off the rails or whatever. But yeah, I think I reflect on that time a lot, and I think again about the practice of formation and the different routes that it takes, and how I'm receiving what other people have poured into me, and I'm sharing that with these students, and here's hoping that they will share it with others, and we'll have those things that are meaningful for a while. Yeah.
No doubt that they are receiving so much from you. No doubt that you are blessing them in terrific ways. And I hope those students know how fortunate they are to have you as their campus minister.
Thanks. I remind them most days. Yeah.
As well you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. The path of humility will always get you where you think you want to be.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it's like George Costanza said, if you think you're telling the truth, then you are.
You only have to convince yourself. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, thanks for taking some time to chat with me. And it's awesome to hear about the great work at Belmont Wesley Fellowship, and grateful to catch up with you.
Thank you, Mark.